Today I'm gonna bless you with some of the best manhwa I've ever read. We've got 5 to go through today, so buckle up and let's get right into the first manhwa. How about we start this list off with a good old classic superhero story. Everyone loves it. Superhuman Era is about Kang Lim, a pretty quiet high school student that lives in South Korea. He's also a superhero named Whitecap. And he's called that because he wears, you're right, a black mask. And whenever an alarm rings, he's there to protect humankind from a threat coming from the ocean, the so-called Xenoterrans. A seemingly mindless alien species that is incredibly fast, strong, and crazy ugly. They randomly show up everywhere on the whole globe and hunt humans for fun. They are so strong that even the army can't do anything to stop them, even though governments across the world even established units specifically to fight them. But even they can't really do much about the stronger ones. The only ones strong enough to push back those Xenoterran attacks are the superhumans like Kang. And there are quite a few of them scattered across the whole world. Even though they prefer to be unknown and only hunt Xenos in secret and only defend themselves in dire situations. And all of these superhumans have increased strength, speed and other typically superhuman features. But in addition to that, they each have a special power. This guy can freeze water. Meh. She's got the power of the sun. Nice. And this one is fat. Like really fat. But the harder the battle is, the higher his spirit rises and he gets slimmer. And the slimmer he gets, the stronger he gets. Yeah, he's my favorite. So now the Xenos try to take over the world and for some reason with every sighting they get stronger and stronger. And we watch the superheroes as they try to defend the Earth from the ever-growing threat. New superhumans reveal themselves from time to time in hope of trying to stop the end of humanity. But some superhumans fight against the humans, trying to gain as much power as possible. I swear this one is the Mona Lisa of manhwas, like the arc goes crazy. To be honest, I don't even care about the story in the slightest. There of course is an overarching story, which isn't even that bad, but I just don't care for it. I could just watch these superhumans and super sacks of meat cave their heads in all day. And you will love it too, because the fights are amazing. Like, look at these panels. But it's not just the spectacular art style, but also the amazing choreography in the battles that makes them so interesting. And in every battle, there's some serious stakes on the line. There are quite a few different powers to stop the fights from ever feeling boring. At the beginning, the powers were quite standard, but as the story progresses and more superhumans reveal themselves, the powers get more interesting and innovative. Through this, the cast also grows in size every few chapters, but it still manages to give each character a proper time to shine. This one is a no-brainer if you want to read a decent story with a wide array of likable characters and some amazing fights. And you really need to trust me on this, guys. This one is a must-read for every fan of fighting manga and manhwa. You won't be able to get enough of it. This next one is a true hidden gem that I found which hooked me right away from the very first chapter, with its crazy unique art and story. So let's get into it. Gao is a suicidal dude, but he's got some good humor. But that's probably because he went crazy after living in this absolute shithole of a world. A world where God came down to earth and as a typical omnipotent and good-hearted God does, he stomps on a giant populated island so hard that all of the inhabitants of this island got turned into some kind of disgusting and supernatural sludge. This sludge can have all sorts of different effects on its surroundings. And after damning an entire island, the god just pissed off. And now, decades after this horrible incident, a giant megacorporation is exploiting humans to work on this toxic island to harvest the sludge. And Gao is one of those people. And today he just wants to get himself some good juice because like he had a shitty day and he doesn't want to go to work and he also forgot to train yesterday. Oh, and he also just got stabbed by 2 kids that wanted to rob him. Now he has to go to the infirmary where they assess his current condition and after some very serious medical checks, he gets sentenced back to work. But this time, he needs to go to the mines on the outskirts of the island. And he even gets a single shot gun for whatever reason. Surely nothing bad can happen out there. And on the way to the very special mine, the train gets ambushed by the fanatics, a cult that worships the god that stomped on the island. He somehow survives the train crash and even manages to evade the fanatics. But while escaping, he falls into the famed sludge, something that's as good as a death sentence. But for some reason, he survives. And not just that, he comes out of the mine he fell into fully ablaze. He can now summon sludge with the properties of fire. Pretty cool, huh? Even though he said that he doesn't want to live anymore, apparently he actually does not want to die at least, and the sludge sensed that in him. So he gets out of the mine and burns all of them and goes back to the supermarket to finally get the juice he wanted. Happy end. Nah, just kidding. Now the super corporation is hunting him down because they want to capture him alive, to experiment on him and keep him as a lab rat forever, because they want to get to the bottom of his newfound powers and find a way to use it for their own good. The best thing about this manhwa is definitely the art and the setting. It's a very unique art style that I'm pretty sure I've never seen before. And let me tell you, the story is something else. I really don't want to know how the author even came up with some of the stuff that happens. You will definitely get surprised more than just a few times while reading. And I also don't want to spoil too much, so you will just have to experience it for yourself. A thing that I want to say is that there's always these nice little texts that give you a bit of lore at the end of every chapter, which is just a small thing, but it shows you that the author cares. This manhwa is one of the most hyped things I've seen since the solo leveling days. And if you're a manhwa fan, you will probably have already heard of this one. A rare isekai with an OPMC that's not just a wet dream of the author. The story, or more in what way the MC is OP, is also something that I promise you won't have seen before. So this lovely little isekai is about Suho Kim, and he's a broke civil engineering student who's had quite a shitty life. He studied civil engineering for years, only for it to lead to nothing. And one day he falls asleep while reading a fantasy novel about an incredible knight that avenges his fallen masters. And suddenly he wakes up as Lloyd Frontera, a character in this novel that he just read, but it's not the main character, but actually a good for nothing, lazy, in-depth, alcoholic noble who's a prick to every person around him, and he uses his status to get what he wants when he wants. The estate that Lloyd is from, that his parents reign over, is on the highway to financial ruin. And adding to that, this character that Suho Kim turned into is also destined to die within the next months. So now it's Suho's mission to better Lloyd's reputation and help his dying estate to regain their lost wealth. And how does he do it? Well, the manhwa takes place in a fantasy world with all kinds of magic and supernatural and fantastical beings, with similar physics as our own world, but it's still pretty much in the medieval times. And that's where he sees his opportunity to get rich or die trying. He tries using his modern engineering knowledge, magic, brutal negotiation tactics, and his cold but loyal knight Javier, the actual MC of the novel, to get what he wants. And through this way, Suho transforms his parents' doomed, bankrupt estate into a thriving modern city. And he doesn't just stop at that, sometimes by his own accord, but most of the time he gets forced to travel across the whole continent and solve the problems of all kinds of people. Whether it be a small tribe in the grasslands or the queen herself. Everywhere he goes, he improves the quality of living by a ton. As I said, most of you have probably already heard of the story before, but if you haven't heard of it, or if you're like me and are one of those people that still didn't want to read it, please do. I was very skeptical because I thought that it's just another isekai, and I'm not really interested in architecture and stuff like that, and the art style also didn't seem that special, so you can't even distract yourself from a mid-story with some beautiful fights. For me it had no appeal, but for some reason I still decided to give it a go, and wow. It's truly amazing. The story, the characters, the relationships between them, and how Suho, in Lloyd's body, manages to gain back the trust of every person that he wronged in the past, and how incredibly hard he works for every single little thing, is beautiful. Genuinely, a 10 out of 10 manhwa. Read it. This manhwa is already completed with over 200 chapters, but if you still want more of the story, it also has a prequel and a sequel. Now this one is a real dime. Ordeal is a story about Chehad, a granted very strong but normal human in a world full of so-called Kimjos. A Kimjo is basically a juiced up person with boosted physical stats and a unique special talent. There are lots of special talents that a Kimjo can have. Some are speedsters, some have the ability to turn into animals, and others can manipulate elements. And those are only a few of them. There are hundreds of different talents that a Kimjo might be born with, but a few lucky ones possess some different power. Power strong enough to eradicate humankind. And when the Kimjo dies, he can either give his power to someone else with a dying breath, or the power will just be randomly assigned to a newborn in the not so distant future. Unlike in Superhuman Era, the Kimjos don't unite to defeat the common threat, but they're at constant war with each other. One faction wants to live in a world full of peace and harmony together with the humans, and the other faction wants to eradicate all humans and even the weaker Kimjos. They are led by Kane, one of the 4 first men, the first ever recorded Kimjos with enormous power. The other 3 are pretty chill and nice. They're based on the gods of the Olympus, but Kane, the one that has crazy beef with a certain type of race, weirdly reminds me of one of my fellow countrymen that aspired to be a painter. Some of you may know him. However, those 2 sides have been in a century-long war with each other, and the war is bigger than ever, because the powers of Kane are bound to be reincarnated, which puts the whole humanity in grave danger. And the story follows Chehad as he fights as a centerpiece in this war, together with his friends and family that he will protect with his life. The art in this one is so nice, and it keeps on getting better and better. Goosebumps level of art style. I love the wide range of different and unique abilities, and the story is also really good. Actually can't think of a single significant bad thing to say about this one. So the story is pretty deep, with lots of lore about the world, the past wars, and all of the significant characters that played a role in the history of this universe. And besides that, a ton of different characters get introduced to us that all tie nicely into the same story. Oh, and the drip goes crazy. Oh, and the connections between most of the characters, whether it be hate or love, it's always great. We've got old war buddies, a group of young fighters from the same dojo, the strongest peoples on earth and their assistants. Every connection you see is done beautifully. And with close to 200 chapters and 3 seasons, you got quite a bit to read of this masterpiece. But trust me, you will fly through those pages. And now the last manhwa on today's list, signaling the end of our precious time together, Leviathan. Just a few decades ago, an icy meteor crashed into Earth. Sounds bad enough already, but it gets worse. The impact caused an endless rainstorm that flooded the entire planet until almost everything disappeared beneath the ocean. Humanity somehow survived by living on giant ships, floating cities, and on top of skyscrapers that still stick out of the water, but the flood wasn't even the biggest problem. The meteor also brought an otherworldly virus that completely transformed marine life. Fish, whales, sharks, everything evolved into gigantic monsters known as leviathans. And now humans are no longer on top of the food chain, they're the prey. The story follows Bota, a young boy who, together with his sister Lita, barely survives after their father sacrifices himself to save them from one of the monsters. From that moment on, Buddha dedicated his life to becoming a defender, strong enough to protect the people around him. But surviving in this world isn't easy, because there's not only the monsters that you have to worry about, but also the few humans left on this world are everything but nice people. One thing I really love about this manhwa is how the world slowly opens up the longer you read it. You constantly get a bit more lore about how humanity adapted to this flooded world and how different settlements survive, and what exactly these terrifying sea monsters are. It never feels like an information dump. I think that the manhwa really starts getting good at about chapter 30. The beginning is still okay and it does a solid job of introducing us to the world, but only then would I say that the story really starts taking off. And the art is also fantastic. It's incredibly detailed and the leviathans generally look massive. There are so many panels where you suddenly realize just how tiny the humans actually are compared to these creatures, and it creates this constant feeling of danger. I'm also just a sucker for flooded worlds, and there's just something about gigantic sea monsters that always fascinated me. And you will get plenty of that. And if you're into bleak dystopian worlds where humanity's barely hanging on, this is an absolute must read. The atmosphere is incredible, the action is intense, and the world building is really, really good. One thing that I can't ignore though is the fan service. There's just simply way too much of it. It's not to the point that it like ruins the story or anything, but every now and then it definitely pulls you out of the otherwise serious atmosphere. Besides that though, Leviathan is an absolute banger and one that I can recommend to pretty much anybody. So that's all for today. I can generally recommend every single manhwa on this list. They're all great and they're all worth reading. Give them a few chapters time. If you still don't like him, drop him, but give it a chance. Yeah, that's all for today. Stay safe, stay happy. Bye.